Joining me now is one of the people behind the Democrats' stronger than expected midterm showing, Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer, Democrat of New York. Well, first, I feel that you should be given the opportunity to take a little bit of a victory lap as the Senate Majority Leader now with a 51-49. What do you chalk this up to?
You hit the nail on the head. Two things, Chris. First, we passed a whole lot of legislation that mattered to people. At the bottom line, people cared. For years, the Congress couldn't take on the prescription drug industry. We didn't lower the costs. For 30 years, I'm the author of the Brady Law and the assault weapons ban. We could do nothing for gun safety. We passed significant laws there. We're bringing our chips industry back to America with good paying jobs here, not in China or overseas. We passed the most significant climate change legislation ever. We passed the most major infrastructure bill ever. So somebody like Raphael Warnock, who, as you say, was extremely talented, had a lot to campaign on. And people said, gee, this Democratic Party is talking about things I care about. But at the same time, people understood that the Republican Party was not the Republican Party of 10 or 15 years ago. It had become a MAGA party. And frankly, one of our successes in messaging was calling it the MAGA party. Now everyone knows what it is. And this party rejects democracy. This party doesn't really tell the truth. And also, and this is not given enough attention, all they do is say blame and talk about problems, but they never have any solutions at all. And so a large number of people, including some Republicans who were not pro-Trump, some independents who lean conservative, said, this is not my party anymore. It's too far right. I'm worried about our democracy. I am going to give the Democrats a chance because look at what they've done. So it was sort of a 1-2 punch. And the Warnock campaign is a metaphor for what happened around the country. Every one of our candidates had great issues to campaign on. There were a terrific bunch of candidates. And at the same time, so many of their candidates embraced this MAGA Republicanism that a lot of people in the middle, too, both things happened. Our base turned out because they cared about things like this, the kids, the students, the young people, about student debt, about climate, about the Dobbs decision. And people in the middle also voted for us, who in past had voted for Republicans because they saw what we were doing compared to what Republicans were doing. So it was a great campaign. We worked very hard to get it done that way, and we succeeded.
Will now be an outright majority in the United States Senate, 51-49. That's different than the 50-50 Senate last time. 2 years ago, as we headed in after that midterm, after the runoff, which was in January last time around, there was a complicated negotiation between you and Mitch McConnell about how a 50-50 Senate's going to work. That doesn't happen this time. You're the foremost expert in America on why 51-49 is better than 50-50. So from your perspective as that expert, explain to us why it matters so much.
Yeah, the bottom line is 51 is so much better than 50 for a bunch of reasons. First, in terms of appointments. When it's 50-50, it takes a long, procedural, torturous road to get candidates for judge or administration positions move forward. We can do it a lot more quickly. And by the way, Chris, one of the things we're proudest of is we put more good, strong, progressive people on the bench than anyone has. We are over 80 judges now that we put in place. That can speed up, and the Republicans' blocking of so many appointments, ambassadors and cabinet, sub-cabinet members that are needed will go forward. Second, our committees we have a majority. And that means we can pass more legislation, at least through the Senate and maybe even through the House, if enough Republicans who are not MAGA start working with us, which I hope they will. But it means that in the past, our committee chair said, I got every Republican against this. I can't pass it out of committee. Third, we have subpoena power, which we didn't. And everyone says, well, you don't want to subpoena the Biden administration. No, but we can subpoena all kinds of corporate bad deeds, climate bad deeds, all kinds of other things. So that's going to be tremendous as well. So it's a dramatic change in the Senate. 50 was great. 51 is even better. And we're so glad we got there. It was very important to us to get there.
There's a bunch of things that have to get done in the lame duck now, and I don't want to get too into the weeds of the omnibus and keeping the government funding. But in the broad strokes here, there's two big issues, right? There's keeping the government open and funded, which, quite frankly, Kevin McCarthy is going to want no part of. He's going to have a very hard time getting his caucus to deliver him votes to do. We have seen this before with Boehner and Ryan. So that's one dynamic that's going to continue. And then that's supercharged by a debt ceiling possibility in which they can credibly threaten the full faith and credit of the U.S., economic calamity, and use that as leverage. How are you gaming out preparing for that as Senate Majority Leader with whoever is going to be the Speaker of the House, the Republican-controlled House?
Well, first, we hope to get an omnibus done of the spending bill for the whole next year to avoid the problem of McCarthy having any control. We're working. We have to come to a bipartisan agreement. We're working with them on that regard. There are negotiations going on. And in fact, one of the things that helps us is even Republican hawks on military stuff realize that if we had a CR, a continuing resolution, that would really hurt our troops, our military readiness, et cetera. So we're pushing hard to get an omnibus bill there. In terms of the debt ceiling, I've always believed it should be done in a bipartisan way. In the past, Republicans resist, and then they eventually realize that it's a lot better for them as well as the country not to risk the full faith and credit of the United States. It's a very risky proposition. The MAGAs will want to do it. But again, if the Republicans follow the MAGAs, they're going to have big problems. What happened last time is that we passed, the Republicans joined us in passing a rule that you only needed 50 to raise the debt ceiling. They didn't have to vote for it. We voted for it. We raised the debt ceiling for 2 years. So we're pushing hard for a bipartisan solution on that one.
Well, just to follow up on that, because you just said to me a few minutes earlier in this interview, you said, look, one of our messages was to these voters, this is not the Republican Party of recent memory. It has changed in fundamental ways. It has become more sort of chaotically destructive. And I'm worried. I'll be honest. I'm worried about the debt ceiling, and I'm worried about what happens. And there does seem a message out of the Democratic leadership and the White House like, don't worry, they'll own this if it goes bad, they'll come around. And I'm a little unconvinced on that.
Well, here's the situation, and this is not just true on debt ceiling. There are a large number of Republicans who follow MAGA, but a lot of the new Republicans who are elected and some of the Republicans in the Senate realize if they follow MAGA, it's to their doom, that the wins we've had in the last two elections will be even greater because the public rejects MAGA. So there are people we can work with. Of those 6 bills that I mentioned that we passed that made people think better of Democrats, 5 were bipartisan. In 5 of them, we didn't get a majority of Republicans, but we got enough Republicans in the Senate to join us that we could pass gun legislation. We could pass legislation on chips. We could pass legislation on infrastructure. And we will work, and I'm making a pitch to those Republicans. Work with us. It'll be much better for the country, but it'll also be better for your party. And if you follow the MAGA route, it's like Thelma and Louise. You're driving your car over the cliff.
Yeah, I'm more confident about the Senate than about the House. Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer, who now, with the newly elected Democratic leader Hakeem Jeffries, is holding down Brooklyn as the center of the political universe, or at least number 2 to Georgia, which I think has its spot in the sun today. Coming up, thank you, Senator. Appreciate it.
Great to be here. Go Brooklyn.
Yeah, exactly.